Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Safwan Masri, Executive Vice President for Global Centers and Global Development at Columbia University, and it really gives me tremendous pleasure to be conversing with students around the world and to be on the stage here with a number of students, but also with my friends and colleagues, Suzanne Kohlberg, Executive Vice President for University Life, Jason Wingard, professor in the School of General Studies and former dean, and Tom Trebat, my good friend and colleague who runs the Rio de Janeiro Global Center. So welcome everyone. The students who will be joining us also in today's forum, who have been participants in the Virtual Internship Program, special welcome to them. Sophia Suvi from the School of General Studies, June Young Choi from Teachers College, Red Coltrane Ingram from Columbia College, Claire Rigney from the School of General Studies, and also from the School of General Studies, Natalie Cimino. Just a very quick word about the Global Centers. The Global Centers is an initiative of the university and of President Bollinger that started 11 years ago in 2009 with 2 centers in Beijing and in Amman, Jordan, which is where I am today, and has expanded over the past decade to include centers in Mumbai, Nairobi, Istanbul, Tunis, Paris, Rio de Janeiro, and Santiago de Chile. So we are in 9 cities around the world, and these global centers serve as satellites, if you will, of the university, facilitating the engagement in research and education and public service of our faculty and students with collaborators around the world. You'll hear more about them as I describe some of the initiatives that we are and have been launching for our students around the world. You know, before the pandemic and the crisis that we are living in today, the world of work was already undergoing radical changes, something we're going to hear a lot more about from Jason Wingard. Increasingly, the office has become virtual. Work can be done from anywhere. Career has become more of a verb than a noun. Now, COVID-19 has only accelerated, I think, these trends and perhaps has transformed enough things in our lives that are likely to be sustained long before this crisis is over. Certainly, as the scale of the crisis became more clear, we knew that we needed to adapt to meet the needs of a changing environment. So the global centers came together back in April, and we decided that we needed to do something to help our students, especially those who had internships lined up for the summer that they were not going to be able to take advantage of anymore. So we wanted to reach out in a special way to the students, to you this summer, because of your disrupted plans. And we leveraged our extensive network of partners throughout the world. And I'm very, very pleased that we were able to generate more than 175 internships. The interns, Columbia students, came from 13 schools, and they were located in 20 countries around the world. This program has been so successful that today we are announcing the fall round of virtual internships, something that Tom Trebat would share more details about towards the end of today's webinar. But I want to take advantage of this and talk about another incredibly important initiative that has received the endorsement of President Bollinger and the university, and that is really particularly important for our international students who are dispersed around the world. We will be unveiling and rolling out over the next days sites where our students may come together to study, work, convene, collaborate, and meet with other students and feel part of a physical Columbia community in their home cities around the world. Of course, this is all subject to very strict health and safety standards that have been applied on campus in New York, physical distancing and mask wearing and so on. Tomorrow, 6 of our global centers, particularly the ones in Paris, Istanbul, Amman, Nairobi, Tunis, and Beijing, will start receiving students who are in those cities. And over the next couple of weeks, we will announce sites outside of the cities of our global centers that students will have access to. We're working with WeWork, the co-working company, to make dedicated space available in a number of cities around the world, in China, elsewhere in East and Southeast Asia, in Europe, and in other places. More of that will be coming to you, but initially we have a number of cities that will be announced within the next few days. We've gone out also with a student survey to try to gauge interest of students. So if you know, if you would like it, just send us a message if you have not received it, and we will be more than happy to have you register your interest and to make that access available. So we're thinking of these as study halls, as community satellites, if you will, that will help get you from up from your couch and out of your pajama and, put on your clothes and go to a co-working space and be around other Columbia students in a comfortable, conducive environment for you to study, work, and just hang out. So more to come on that. But once again, the cities that we are starting with tomorrow are the 6 that I mentioned. In addition, we will be announcing additional space in Beijing, and we will be announcing space that will be accessible by our students in Shanghai, Shenzhen, Singapore, a couple of other cities. And for our students who are in Israel, we're also making space available at Tel Aviv University right after the Jewish holidays and the end of the current lockdown. So with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce more formally my friend and colleague, Suzanne Goldberg, EVP of University Life. Suzanne is also the Herbert and Doris Wexler Clinical Professor of Law at Columbia Law School. In her role as EVP for University Life, Suzanne focuses on intellectual life and community citizenship across Columbia's many schools. I don't think that position and Suzanne have been as busy as they have been over the past 6 or 7 months, ensuring that we navigate our way as a community through this very difficult time. And I know, Suzanne, how careful and compassionate and empathetic your and your office's approach towards our students has been, and I know that is greatly appreciated. Among the many programs that Suzanne spearheads is one on sexual respect and community citizenship, as well as task forces on gender-based misconduct prevention, race, ethnicity, and inclusion, and Columbia's Awakening Our Democracy series, all incredibly important. So Suzanne, thank you for being with us this morning, and we all look forward to hearing your welcoming remarks.
Safwan, thanks so much. I'm so glad to be here. I'm glad to be here with you and with Tom and with Jason and with all of the students for this discussion. And I really want to welcome everybody who's here, welcome you to Columbia if you're new, welcome you back if you've been here before, and say that we're just all so glad to be part of this community. I often say, the university is the size of a small city, which is true by numbers. We're 50,000 people in all. At this point, we're also the size of a city across the globe. And what is most important in this shared city that we have, this shared community, is to find ways to stay connected, to be part of a common community. I know it's a very stressful time for many students, for many people, for many different reasons. One of the reasons, one of the challenges, and one of the reasons I know many of you are here today is, well, what about work? What will I do? What is happening? And it's wonderful that Jason Wingard will be speaking about the future of work and really engaging in exactly the kinds of questions that are on so many students' minds. I want to just, if I can, Safwan, say an extra word about other sources of stress and other ways to address them. So one of the things we know, right, as humans is that we do thrive on connection with other people. And one of the very special parts of being a member of the Columbia University community is to connect with Columbia students around the world, across schools, across disciplines, people who have all sorts of different interests, things you're familiar with, things you're not familiar with. And so one of the questions is, well, how do you do that when we're in a remote environment? You know, I hope that there are lots of ways to do this. Some you will find if you are near them in the Columbia's global centers and the pop-up centers that Safwan just described and that you'll hear more about. Some will be through work and internship opportunities that you'll hear more about. And some are through the incredible range of activities that your schools are offering. And I hope that you know that university life has for you nearly every day. So every Tuesday, at whatever time it arrives for you, be sure to open up the email from Joseph Greenwell and Ishel Rosal. There are senior officers inside of the Office of University Life who have put together incredible events for you. And these are all online. Everybody's welcome to join. And you'll see that this week and next week include Columbia Welcome, right? A specially curated set of events from around the university, everything from community mask making to a battle of the DJs called Lollapalooza to lots more. You'll see this throughout the year. And when you're kind of wondering what to do, or should you watch one more Netflix show or whatever it is in the way you're spending time, really want to just invite you to make it a plan every day to step into one of these activities, right? If you're not an everyday person, then at least a couple of times a week, and to meet new people. We have a couple of events, and we'll have more throughout the year, called Speed Friending. Just a quick way and fun way, always oversubscribed, to meet people online and get to know a few more people around the university. Whatever your thing is, there are lots of ways to connect. And when you do that, each step you take in, the university community embraces you more, and you help build this community. So even being here today, especially being here today, is part of that. There's so much more in this year ahead, and really welcome back. Very glad you're here. Back over to you, Safwan.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you for all that you do on our behalf and on our students' behalf. It's a great pleasure to welcome you, Jason. Haven't seen you in a while, and it's great to be with you. Jason is the former dean, as I mentioned earlier, of Columbia's School of Professional Studies. He is now a professor of professional practice in human capital management. Prior to Columbia, Jason has had also a very colorful, varied, and important career in the private sector, in the business world. He served as managing director and chief learning officer at Goldman Sachs. He was also vice dean at the Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania, where he was the head of executive education. Jason, very relevant to this forum today, has published widely on the topic of work and the future of work, and the future of learning, leadership, strategy, and innovation. We're delighted to have you, Jason, and we're all really looking forward to learning from you. So the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you very much, Safwan. Good morning and good afternoon to all of you who have logged in for this important webinar. It's not the way we want to be able to engage. We so much prefer to be in person, as Suzanne mentioned. You know, it's the power of the human connection. And for teaching and for sharing information, being able to be live is really valuable. However, it is what it is. Here we are, and I'm so excited to be here to share some information about the future of work. So many of you are in internships now, or newly starting your careers. You're looking for work, and I want to be able to share some insights with you and have a good Q&A. So get your questions ready. What I'd like to do first is thank you, Safwan. Thank you, Suzanne, for the great work you're doing as administrators and faculty at Columbia University. Thank you to Thomas and Youssef for the invitation to speak today. The work that the Global Centers is doing around the world is tremendous, and it's an honor for me to be able to speak with you all today, and hopefully you all appreciate just what a wonderful resource the Global Centers are. As Safwan said, my research focuses on leadership development, organizational strategy, and most specifically, the future of work. I have a book on the future of work coming out this year, published by Stanford University Press. And as a part of that, I've spent a lot of time with CEOs and leaders around the world talking about the trends that are affecting work, that are affecting people and management. Most recently, COVID-19 has really impacted the way in which leaders are thinking about work and the way in which people who are looking for jobs are being affected. So what I'd like to do is spend a few minutes talking about a couple of trends that are affecting the future of work, that are affecting us now, given the pandemic. And then I will answer your questions relevant to that and relevant to you specifically. Last week, I spent some time with senior executives from Silicon Valley, CEOs from companies like eBay. I facilitated a discussion around the future of work, and more specifically, what should they be focused on during this pandemic, after the pandemic, to make sure that they have competitive advantage. The number one thing that they are worried about is the talent war. There's a talent war that's impacting all industries right now, but Silicon Valley and the technology companies in particular. What does that mean? That means that there is a war for the best talent to do the best jobs by persons who possess the best skills to be able to help those companies win in this new world of work. And so being able to get that talent, recruiting them, being able to maintain that talent and retain them is of the utmost importance. So what is it that those CEOs, that those senior leaders need to do to be able to recruit the best talent, to be able to retain the best talent? And the best talent is you. So this is really relevant in terms of what you all are looking for. The data says that in the next 4 years, by 2025, the beginning of 2025, 4 or 5 years, millennials and Gen Zs, those generations, that population will be 75 to 80% of the workforce. And data also says that contrary to previous generations, this generation, the millennials in particular and Gen Z also, are not going to cater to the status quo of the organizational environment. They are not going to listen to what managers and leaders want them to do. They are going to dictate for themselves what kind of culture they will work in, how they will work hard, how they will perform. It's all going to be dictated by them. And so there's a lot of data that supports that, but the baby boomers and Generation X, we all got with the program. You told us what to do, we did it. You provided incentives for us to make more money or to get promoted, we followed those trends. The generations of millennials and Generation Z, they're not following compensation. They're not following mandated culture. They are actually expecting to be able to get what they want in order to be able to work and perform at their best. So what do they want? That's what I talked about with these CEOs. I'm going to give you 5 trends about what this generation wants and how it's affecting the future of work, and then we will be able to discuss that in a few minutes. The number one thing, and you all have heard this before, is flexibility. Work flexibility, job flexibility, balance of time. They want to be able to have enough flexibility in how they're working so that they can come to the table strongly when they need to. That doesn't mean 9 to 5. That doesn't mean sitting in a cube staring at the computer continuously with an hour lunch break. That means giving them the flexibility to do work on device. That means to be able to do work in remote locations, virtually, physically, not physically. They want to be able to have the balance that is required to be able to come in and out of doing the work in the way that they want. So one example of that is Twitter. So Twitter said most recently, they were one of the first that came out and said that we are going to allow during this pandemic our employees to stay at home for the remainder of the year. And they continue to extend that. Other companies have followed that. Why did they do that? Well, Jack, the CEO, said the reason why they did that is because they had to make a decision. Do they want to keep the employees that they have, continue to develop them, or do they want to have to go out and hire new people and onboard new people once the people leave? People were going to leave if they're going to be made to come into the office before they felt safe. People were going to leave if they didn't feel like they had the flexibility to do the job and leverage their skills in the way that they wanted. So flexibility and balance is the number one theme. Companies like Twitter are thinking about, we want to keep our talent. We want to know, and most of our talent is in the generations of Gen Z and millennials. And so we want to make sure that as we keep those and as we move into the next couple of years, that we're doing everything we can to satisfy them. So that's number one. The number two thing is communication and feedback. And so we all know that, when you're doing a job, you have a target, you have expectations. Maybe you come at the end of the year and find out whether or not you did well against that job. Maybe you're rewarded with a promotion and it's objective, maybe it's not. But what millennials and Gen Zs really want is for you to give them constant feedback. They want to know how they're doing on a constant basis. So in addition to saying, Jason, this is what I want you to do for this work. This is how it relates to what our team is doing. This is how it relates to what the company is doing and how they're being measured. And I'm going to give you feedback against that. I'm going to give you resources when you tell me you don't have enough. I'm going to give you rewards when you tell me you've satisfied things. I'm going to give you coaching and training along the way. That's important. Managers sometimes say they don't have time to do that. I don't have time to worry about all of the direct reports and their direct reports and giving them feedback and coaching and mentoring. I just have my eye on the prize and doing the work. But once again, millennials, Gen Z, they want to know how they're doing. So if you don't give them the feedback that they require, then they're not going to want to come, they're not going to want to stay, and you're not going to have the competitive advantage that you're looking for. As Safwan said, I worked at Goldman Sachs before I was the chief learning officer there. One of the principal things that we wanted to focus on was giving feedback. So we were constantly thinking about how can we train our managers to be able to sit down with the people who work for them. How frequently does that need to happen? It needs to happen at least once a week. It needs to happen every time something important happens, every kind of transaction that's necessary. If you're given a pitch, if you're an investment banker, a junior banker, and there's a pitch that's taking place, and you help to develop that pitch book, you want to be in the room to see how well it worked so that you can adjust how you're developing those pitch books and later. But it used to be that junior bankers never sat in the room and developed pitch books. You want to be able to get feedback on why did the buyer actually buy into this pitch book? Why did they not? So it requires leaders being able to get coaching now on how much do I need to interact with the people who work for me? What do I need to say to them? What kinds of feedback do I need to give? What kinds of communication do I need to give to the individuals and the team at large to make sure that they are following my lead along this journey and keeping pace with what we're trying to do? The third thing is the hyper investment of skills. So what do I mean by that? We've heard a little bit about how the work is changing right now. It used to be that the shelf life of knowledge was about 10 years. You could learn a skill and it would last you for years and years and years before you had to retool yourself. Now the shelf life of knowledge, particularly in Silicon Valley, but across many industries, is only about 6 to 9 months. And so what does that mean? That means that you need to continually retool yourself. What does that mean for CEOs who are in organizations? And this matters to you all. It means they have to either retool their workforce on a constant basis, or they have to go out and continue to hire new people regularly who have those skills. And so we see a lot of companies who are trying to figure out which way they want to go in this particular area of skilling. Amazon has doubled down by saying they're going to invest $700 million, almost $1 billion, in retooling their existing staff. They are going to focus on the people who already work for Amazon, and they know that their jobs and the skill requirements are going to change very rapidly. So they're going to keep retooling them, reskilling them, training them, making sure that the existing staff has what they need. Google's on the other end of the spectrum. Google is slowly getting rid of their full-time staff, and they are investing in the gig economy. The gig economy, as many of you know, is when you hire contractors, so the open market. And so that's what Google is saying, well, we're not going to have as many full-time staff as we used to have because we can't train them fast enough. Amazon is betting that they can, but we don't think we can. So we're going to go out and hire contractors to do our R programming, our artificial intelligence strategy, all the things that keep changing so rapidly. You all, as young people and people who are changing careers mid-level, need to think about as you're looking at internships and as you're looking at jobs, what is it that I want to do? Am I the kind of person who can join a company like Amazon and be retooled and retrained and stay with them by showing my value on an ongoing basis? Am I the kind of person who has the skill set and I can retool myself and I can be in the gig economy and on the contract market and have companies like Google go out and find me, and then I can go from Google to Amazon to other companies that are hiring contractors. The fourth is what I call cause positioning. This is the fourth scheme affecting the future of work, particularly around the talent war. Cause positioning means that companies and leaders need to stand for something. They need to have a cause. They need to take a position on an ideology or an idea or a movement, and the people who work for them, particularly millennials and Gen X and Gen Z, want to make sure that those leaders, those companies are actually standing for something. Now, it doesn't matter what it is. That's what the data says. This is not political. This is actually social. This is standing for causes so that the organizations can be more authentic. The leaders can be more authentic. So a couple of examples. So Patagonia, for example, they're the clothing manufacturer and retailer. They have made an investment in sustainability. They want to make sure that the way they make products and the products that they use and how they engage with the world is enhancing sustainability, a more sustainable environment. They are protecting our natural resources. They are not wasting it through pollution and other means. People who work for Patagonia really buy into that and believe it, and they're glad that they're taking a stand against it. Another example is Delta. So Delta Airlines about a year ago said there's a lot of immigration policy that is taking place in Washington. There's a lot of discussion about whether immigrants that are particularly coming across the border in the United States from Mexico into the US, they were separating, our government was separating the mothers from some of their children of these immigrants. And Delta said, we're not going to fly these family members in a way that separates them. So you're not going to be able to use our airplanes, our commercial fleet to do that. We're just going to take a stand and say, we don't agree with this and we want to make it known. And so we're going to publicize that. So you see organizations like that. Another one is Ben & Jerry's. The CEO of Ben & Jerry's has said that Black Lives Matters to him. He's not a Black man himself, but he wanted to make sure that he stood for and make sure everybody knew what he stood for. So this is a cause position. In some cases, you say, well, that might be bad for business. It used to be that leaders and organizations were social issue agnostic. You come to work, you build your product, you manage your service, and you roll it out. You don't get involved in any of that stuff that's happening in the world. Now what the workforce wants, what they require, is that you do stand for something, that you do make a claim. Last example I can give you is around Nike. So Nike has controversially supported Colin Kaepernick, who is a football player in the United States for the National Football League, and he began to kneel during football games to be able to bring awareness to racial injustice that's affecting Black Americans in the United States. And so Nike said, we're going to support him. We're going to support women who are athletes to be able to help them get equal pay in the workplace and to be able to get promotions and to be able to have to level the playing field between men and women across all industries and work. In some cases, that can be bad for business, and in some cases, it can be good. The research is showing, though, if you take a cause as a leader, if you take a position for a cause as an organization, the workforce in general, and again, particularly millennials and Gen Z, will reward you for that. They will come work for you, and they will stay working for you, and they will give you your best. Now, the last one is around branding. It used to be that companies could do a good job, deliver for their shareholders, perform well on Wall Street, and that's all you needed to be able to do well and for people to want to come work for you. The old IBM, the old Ford Motor Company. Now, what you need is to have a good social presence. You need to be able to be seen on Reddit, on Facebook messaging. You need to be seen on Instagram, the news, Twitter. You need to have a good social media presence to talk about some of the things that we've already said. Are you reskilling your people and giving them transferable skills? Are you taking a position against causes? Are you providing flexible work arrangements that your employees can benefit from? All the things you're doing as an organization, communication and value in your employees, et cetera, needs to be pushed out on social media so that your brand is enhanced for the kinds of work that you're doing and the kind of company that you are, because that's how people talk about and communicate with one another these days, is through social media and sharing and allowing your message to go viral. So let me review. What I was saying to you and the message that I'm delivering is that the future of work has been focused on for the last couple of years. We all want to know, as leaders, as managers, and employees, what does the future hold? How do we need to be preparing ourselves to be successful in the world of work? COVID and the pandemic has accelerated the future of work. We are now thinking about what this new world is going to look like, this new normal, now that we're going to be increasingly virtual. We're not going to go all the way back to the way we were. This is going to be a new normal for us. Nobody knows what it looks like, but we all know that it's going to be different, it's going to be changed, and it is going to be more hybrid in its approach. And so senior leaders, such as the ones I was talking about from Silicon Valley, but across all industries, are thinking about how they can be competitive in this new world of work, particularly as the pandemic unfolds and as we return to a more physical state. And what these CEOs are thinking about now is the data suggests that millennials and Gen Z are going to be the bulk of the workforce moving forward. That's not a big deal, except for the fact that they are not going to change and adapt to the culture that we leaders want them to partake in. They are going to dictate the kind of culture that we need to have. So it begs the question, what do we need to do to satisfy them so that they do well for us, so that they work and perform at their highest level? And we talked about 5 things: the flexibility and the balance that they need. We talked about communication and feedback in an ongoing way, the hyper investment in skills, whether retooling and reskilling your workforce, or whether that's engaging in the gig economy and hiring contractors. It's also about cause positioning, your organization, your senior leaders taking a stance and messaging support of a cause, doesn't matter what it is. And the last thing is around branding, making sure that your organization has a presence, and your leaders for that matter, has a presence on social media so that you can showcase the kind of organization you are and the work that you're doing. So I'll pause there and allow questions to be taken.
Jason, thank you. This was really fascinating, illuminating, and insightful and instructive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I come back to you with questions, I do want to thank Suzanne Goldberg for being with us this morning. I know, Suzanne, you have to go on to another event, and I just wanted to thank you for being with us and for the wonderful words that you shared with us. So thank you.
Thank you, Safwan, and thank you, Jason. I want to stay and ask a lot of questions. So I trust that all of the students and others in the audience will ask you all of those questions, and I'll be able to watch afterwards. But I think I would just underscore, when you think about all you've shared with us and the tremendous insights that you were able to crystallize so quickly, and we put those into what we know is is a very dynamic world, a world that has always been dynamic, right? So this is another state of change. And the question, and really the challenge you've thrown out, is how do all of us, whatever stage in our careers, whether we've had a career already or we're about to start or we're fairly far along, how do all of us engage with where we are in this time and do our best to contribute to it, and with the skills and the training of a Columbia education, not only contribute, but really lead in this space. So thank you so much. And thank you to Safwan and to the Global Centers for creating this opportunity for conversation today.
Thank you, Suzanne. We'll follow up afterwards, and I'll give you a quiz, Suzanne, after this session, all right?
I'm ready. Okay. You too.
Take care.
So back to you, Jason. I mean, I really found it fascinating, and everything that you talked about really resonated. The issue of balance and flexibility. I loved your examples of how Amazon and Google are at 2 ends of a spectrum, and probably neither will be right and neither will be wrong, right? I mean, I think we will probably see both kinds of things and everything in between take shape. I do hope that as all of us, young and older, have really benefited from this crisis and the opportunity to spend time with ourselves and to reflect, and we have been open to revelations about life and about our future as a community, as a global community, and as individuals and society. And I hope that we bring a lot of balance into everything that we do. I was particularly also drawn to your trend of cause positioning. I think it was your fourth trend, and it's wonderful that companies can do this and not come under attack. I mean, I remember about 3 decades ago when Benetton, for example, had its branding around the colors of Benetton, and where it brought, people of different races and backgrounds and sexual orientations and so on, and people were accusing it of doing that sort of, to benefit its bottom line. And now, the examples from Ben and Jerry's and Nike and Delta and all the others. I think, there's now perhaps more of a critical mass and less skepticism about that. And ultimately, isn't it true that if you are positioning yourself around causes and it gains you more respect by people, and that then translates into greater revenue, then why not? Although I suspect that in some of these cases, you're also suffering economically because of the positions that you take. So I wonder if you can indulge me with a quick answer before I turn to the student questions.
Yeah, that's a good point, Safwan. It used to be that if you stuck your neck out there, if you will, and supported causes, that it could have a backlash. Now it seems like there could be a backlash, but there really isn't. I mean, the data really shows that part of what you need to do is get yourself in the news, get yourself in the dialogue, the public sphere around supporting something. So we have seen cases where the support is on both sides of the aisle, if you will. So you have CEOs and organizations that are supporting social causes and cultural diversity, racial diversity, et cetera. And then you have some that are supporting other causes such as abortion rights and things like that. And so one example I can give you is Chick-fil-A. So Chick-fil-A is a fast food chain in the United States, and its owner is very conservative. Very right wing, and supports gun rights, and is not supportive of abortion and women's rights, is not supportive of immigration rights, things like that. In general, Generation Z and millennials are not in favor of someone who supports those types of causes in general. However, he is speaking out in support of these issues and cases, and it's not hurting business. And that's because, once again, the data supports that it doesn't matter which cause you support. What matters is that you're supporting a cause, that you are being vocal about something. Where it hurts you is when you don't support anything. Then the level of trust goes down for consumers and for employees alike, because they say, well, we don't know what this organization or what these leaders stand for. We have no idea. It's actually better to do something on the left side or on the right side and stand firm on it. People can agree or disagree with it, but what they really support is that you said something.
Right. And I guess it works both ways, because in an increasingly polarized world, you'll have the followers and you'll have the detractors, depending on the cause and your position on it. So moving on to the, actually, before I move on to the questions, I want to just a message to the students, which I'll come back and repeat at the end. And that is, I spoke about the initiative to give you access in your home cities around the world. Not all cities, of course, but to register your interest, I invite you to go to globalcenters.columbia.edu/university-for-international-students-survey. I will repeat this at the end, and I think one of my colleagues is going to be posting it. You can only do this if you are an international student of Columbia University stranded outside of the United States, okay? So the first question that I have for you from a student is from a Rio office intern, a participant in the virtual internship program for this year, and that is Gabrielle Franco. Gabrielle is a Columbia College student who anticipates graduation in May. He's studying Latin American and Caribbean studies and political science, and he is originally from Sao Paulo, Brazil. And he asked specifically about your communication and feedback trends. You mentioned that 75 to 80% of the workforce will dictate sort of the culture, the kind of environment they want to work in. But what Gabrielle is asking in terms of the intergenerational aspects of work dynamics, right? Between the boomers, you and I, to some extent, and the millennials and the Generation Z, millennials and Generation Z sort of as a group, with the new context of strictly virtual internships, for example, for the Generation Z students at Columbia. can we ensure that feedback is given in an effective, continual, and reciprocal way? So if I'm Generation Z, I'm dictating the culture to a very large extent, but I still want feedback and I still want to give feedback. So how do you do that in a constructive and effective manner?
That is a great question. Thank you very much for that. One of the things that's happening right now is this notion of managing virtual teams. And so the short answer to your question is it's the responsibility of managers to be able to adapt to this new work environment of being virtual, and to be able to give and to be able to communicate effectively and to give the feedback and to be able to measure performance in a new way. And so that's not the employee's responsibility, that's the manager's responsibility. So how do they do that? One of the things that Gen Z and millennials like is that when you're working virtually, it takes the subjectivity out of performance. What does that mean? It means that, you know, when you are an extrovert, for example, and you're highly social, you can pop by your office, the office of your manager, and talk about whatever, whether it's business or personal. You know, you can talk around the water cooler, you can have drinks after work, you can do a lot of things to build relationships and get to know people. And you are asserting that the value is your likability and who you know and how well you know them. When you're working virtually, it's much more objective. And so it's much more of a responsibility for the manager to clearly articulate what our strategy is. Here's what we need to do as an organization. Here's what your team needs to do, by when, and with what resources, and how we're going to measure it. Here's what you as an individual need to be able to do. Then the communication is set, and then the measurement and feedback comes in. How are you doing against those stated objectives? What do you need to be able to do better? What do I need to be able to do as your manager to be able to help you along the way? That's the right way to do it. So the question that you're asking is, how's communication going to be done? It's going to be done objectively. And in some ways, managing a virtual team is easier because you have the ability to write it down and to be much more systematic. How does feedback happen? It happens on a continuous basis against those stated objectives that were communicated. And the feedback is supposed to go two ways. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because managing up and managing down are both equally important. And so managing across does that. Exactly. And managing across, right. So, so working in a virtual organization, in summary, should be easier for the employee. It's a challenge for the manager to manage these virtual teams, but the formula is to communicate everything that needs to happen, by when and with what resources, and how it's going to be measured. And then the feedback loop needs to be constant against those at every step of the way. And they need to be not only telling you how you're doing, but asking how I'm doing as a manager, what I can do for you to be more supportive, what else you need. That's the place where most managers, where there's this intergenerational gap, is going to come into contention, because I, as a Generation X, and Safwan may not want to ask you, you know, just because of how we were managed and how we came up in the world, we may not want to ask you what we can do to better support you. We want to tell you exactly what you need to do. And that's where the change has to happen.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Jason. The next question is from Karen Liu, who is an intern at the Beijing Global Center. Karen is a Columbia College student in the class of 22, originally from Hong Kong. And Karen is asking about the increased stress and mental health risks brought on by remote working, at least during the crisis. And this is something that Suzanne Goldberg mentioned in her introductory remarks. And Karen, you know, goes on to describe how, you know, working remotely, on the one hand, enables you to spend more time with family and you know, more time sort of on your own and reflecting and so on. But that the line between working hours and personal time of employees who work in that kind of environment could increase stress and increase mental health risks significantly. So what do you say to that, and what kind of strategies may be used in that kind of an environment under crisis like the one that we are in now, or in the future as more and more work becomes remote?
Great question by Karen. Thank you very much for that. two of the themes that I gave satisfy that. So you're absolutely right that working remotely, having to balance work and home life. Some people have children that they're caring for, or they're helping them to do school. Others have parents that they're caring for, or some members of their family may get sick. And it's also that you're around your work and around your home at the same time, all the time. And so it can be overwhelming. And so we have seen a spike in mental health issues affecting people because it's just too much. It's too intense. So what is, the answer is what can we do? Two of the themes that I gave you, one around flexibility and balance, and the other on communication and feedback. So flexibility and balance, it's up to the manager to make sure that the balance is taking place. Gone are the days where we want to work our people to the bone. We want to work them so hard. We want to make sure that they're up early and staying at work late at night, and they're always on in terms of their device and available, and that they're working on the weekends. We know now that that is not productive. That is not going to get the best out of their employees. And frankly, people aren't going to stay. So this is going back to the generation, the younger generation is going to dictate that they're not going to take that. And so as a result, they will leave. Well, it's bad for mental health if you actually do that as a manager. If you make people work more than they can and they don't want to, and now we have all of these other competing stressors that are in our world, it's not good. So it's up to the manager to be able to do that. How do they do that? Well, one, you do some of the tactics that organizations are doing. They have, several organizations now are having every one Friday a month and giving people off, time away from work to be able to spend on themselves, to recover, to rejuvenate, to rest, to get their life back in order. Others are giving, more regular days than that, but at least one day a month to be able to rejuvenate and rest. Others are checking in with the people who work for them and making sure that they're not staying online too long. For example, if you work for me, then I shouldn't send you a message at 10 o'clock at night, because then I'm setting the expectation that you're reading at 10 o'clock at night and responding to me. So I can manage my communication to be within normal working hours. The other thing is, that helps with mental health is being clearer about what's expected of you. Not just saying, I want you to do good work and leaving it up to you, and then you do a whole lot of work because you don't really know where to focus. But if I'm really specific with you, as I said earlier, about here's where we're going as a company, here's where our team fits in, and here's what work you need to do specifically to satisfy it, and here's how I'm going to measure you. Here are the resources that are available to you. You can give me feedback to help you. If you can be clear about that as managers, it really helps to lessen the mental stress that employees are going through, because they know exactly what they need to do. They can balance their time against the responsibilities that they have at home. They know how to, what they're going to be measured against and what resources they have available to them, and that they can ask for help, as opposed to leaving it broad and open and expecting the employee to just do a whole lot of good work, hoping that something that they're doing actually hits. But then you're doing a lot of wasted work, a lot of work that's not necessary.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you. I have one more question from a student that's come to us, and then I want to go through it maybe a little bit. And then we have questions that are coming from the audience through the Q&A button. And so I want to try to get to as many as possible before turning it back to Tom for the next part of this program. So the question from Mai Mursi, who is a Columbia College, brings in the international and global dimension of things. So if we can maybe try to address that very quickly. Basically, what Mai is asking is, with virtual work and like the internships that students are engaged in, you don't have to worry perhaps as much about visas and work permits and so on, but maybe you do. So the question is, what changes do you see in the patterns of international work and collaboration? Might there be opportunity for greater efficiency, as we live in an increasingly globalized world? Also, another dimension, it's still constricted by hegemonic relations of power, if you will. Do you see these changes, these power relations perhaps changing, or how do you see them affecting the future of work? So I know it's, deal with the whole world, Jason, now, and everything about international in a quick answer.
Yeah, I'll try to give a quick answer since we have more to go. That is a very good question, Naif. I think that, you know, one of the things that the tech companies that I spoke of earlier are really focused on is how to open up their workforce to be more global. It has been the case that, you know, you have satellite offices, if you are Facebook, all over the world, but your main hub is in Silicon Valley. And so you have focused a lot on bringing people to California, USA, for internships, for entry-level jobs, for training. You're doing everything in that one locus. The problem is that Facebook and other companies have users, have clients, have partnerships all over the world. So you really don't need to have the same hub and spoke model that we have now, where there are headquarters in Silicon Valley or headquarters in New York City, and then satellite hubs all around the world, or you know, headquarters in Paris or anywhere else in the world. And so what we're seeing now is more of a network effect, where you can have offices and organizations, mostly virtual, probably in the future, but also some physical for certain types of work, that are located all over the world, that are responsive to those regions, that are responsive to the clients and the partnerships that are in that region of the world. And so that network effect is actually a stronger way to do business than the hub and spoke model of physically having most of the work being done in one location and all the satellites happening elsewhere. So what does that mean for those of you who are doing internships and other work and having to get visas and having to try to figure out ways to cross borders? You won't have to do it anymore, right? And so if work doesn't have to cross those borders, then you can work anywhere for any industry doing any kind of work from anywhere in the world without having to worry about the politics and the administration of crossing boundaries.
Thank you, Jason. So in the interest of time, what I'm going to do is just read off a couple of questions and then ask you, Jason, if you wouldn't mind, once I turn it over to Tom at the next part of the program, to answer those questions perhaps on the Q&A button, if you don't mind. But you know, just to give everybody a chance to hear them, Mariana Pereira is asking about the possibility of using gamification techniques as a way to satisfy the constant feedback need of millennials, as the way that she frames it. Connor Mack asks about entrepreneurs and founders of early stage companies. How do they balance employee flexibility with the extreme time commitment needed to successfully scale? I'll pick just a couple of others. Jeanette Maturin asks about government employment, which is usually rigid. What can you suggest for government organizations that would need to adjust to and prepare for the future workforce? And then from Bariham Idrisu, the question is, how do managers and supervisors score virtual interns, if there is such a thing? So anyway, I'll leave you with those questions, Jason, and if you have a chance, maybe you can quickly answer them in the Q&A button. There aren't too many of them. With that, and as I turn it to Tom, I want to thank you, Jason. This has been spectacular, really spectacular. I've learned a lot, and I know that our participants, our students have, you know, really learned a great deal from you, Jason. Thank you for your insights, and thank you for your energy, and thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you, Jason.
Well, thank you, Safwan. I just want to thank you once again, and the Columbia Global Centers for all the work that you're doing. And to all of you who are students out there, I want to give you a call to action. Make sure that you think about the 5 themes that I've given you. Continue to ask questions throughout this webinar, but take it upon yourselves to think about and challenge yourself. How are you going to grow from this experience today? What are you going to do differently that will make you more competitive for employers and allow you to be more successful, and then to represent Columbia better in the workforce? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you. Before I turn it over to Tom, now I have a much easier address, URL, for students who want to register their interest in accessing Columbia space in their home city. And that is Global Centers, one word, globalcenters.columbia.edu /UIIS, which stands for University Initiative for International Students. Thank you. Tom, I turn it over to you, my friend.
Thank you very much, Safwan, and welcome to all of you. Thank you, Dean Wingard, for those remarks, useful to all generations, I might add. we have 3 speakers set up. Safwan, we really could have picked from the 170 interns. You could have almost picked blindly and gotten very, very good people. We have excellent people to represent the experience. 3 excellent people to speak first to represent the experiences of so many during this last summer. I've asked each of them, Safwan, to address us in 3 to 5 minutes. Class is coming up for some of them in a few minutes. What did you do? Where did you work? Why did it matter to you? And what advice do you have to offer to students considering hybrid or virtual internships and worried about how much they can or cannot advance their career opportunities? Our first speaker, I want to welcome, if she could please unmute, is Safia Suthi. Safia, thank you so very much. I'll let you introduce yourself. Please, I just wanted to welcome you to the webinar and thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
Sorry, I was muted. Hi, I'm Safia. I am a student at GS, part of Columbia, part of the dual BA program with Sciences Po. I'm currently a major in human rights. So when I saw the Global Center was offering an internship in Jordan with the UNRCO, the UN Resident Coordinator Office in Jordan, doing human rights research, that kind of seemed like an absolute perfect fit for me. It's exactly in line with what I want to do. And so I got into the internship and it was wonderful. And I realized I was the first virtual intern or employee they've ever had. So it was a really fun experience working with the team and trying to create those kind of systems to make such a virtual internship work. My main job while I was there was creating was comparing their current programs in Jordan working with COVID in order to make them in line with human rights recommendation and human rights law, as well as with the existing kind of principles that they had in mind. So as somebody who's about to go to law school, this was incredible because it was a way to kind of branch all my different interests in terms of research, actual work in Jordan, doing human rights work, and doing kind of a legal analysis of real world programs. It worked really well. We try to schedule weekly meetings in order to make that happen. And I think that the main thing with virtual internships is making sure that everybody's aware of the different time zones, making sure everybody has their expectations set up out front. So you know how much work what they want from you, what you want from them in terms of your goals. And they were super receptive in that regard. And kind of doing that traditionalized 1 week, like once a week check-in, as well as people being there if you ever need extra help responding to emails, things like that. But having that kind of consistency in regards to communication. The communication part is what I believe to be the most important. And especially when I was working with people from all over the world, most of them were based in Geneva at the time, big time difference, and actually doing work based in Jordan. So we were all kind of scattered. But it was a really interesting experience and you can do this work remotely. I had no issue being able to conduct this stuff, being able to talk with the teams and make sure that everything was done, not being done in an office. I think my main issue was kind of creating, and this is my own issue that I recommend all students to think about, is just making sure you separate work time and me time. Because when you're at home and your home is your office, it gets very easy to kind of being like, yeah, it's 11, I'll just keep working on this thing and just not think about anything else. So like still creating that me time is super important. But otherwise, I think it was a really successful, interesting experience for me, being able to work with an agency such as the UN, even from here at home, when I would not have been able to go there, probably even if COVID wasn't happening. So it's I think it's a very amazing program to kind of open up opportunities for a lot of students who don't have the resources or capabilities in the time of COVID and outside of it to actually work with these high-level organizations and do real-world field work while still being at home.
Thank you so much, Safia. That was a wonderful overview. Just to call attention to the fact that you worked with one of our offices, our Amman Global Center, one of the first global centers created. Relatively small number of students who are from Jordan going to the university, but a huge interest in internships, given Jordan's critical position in the world today, and especially its work among refugees. So happy that you could get that internship set up that obviously helped you in your career. And just a quick question, because I know we need to move on, but you felt, didn't you, that the people on the receiving end at the organization really reached out to you and cared about you? Or did you have to make an effort to remind them that you were around and that you had work to do and you required feedback? How did the people in the office react to you?
I think that for a certain extent, because it was the first virtual internship and they didn't really know how to deal with me, I think at times they may have been less receptive as I would have personally liked. But I think it's just because they were busy with COVID and everything was chaotic. And so that's another thing that I recommend to people. Remind people that you're there. Say, hey, like, I want another project. Because it's really interesting work. And when they match you up with these places, like, it's interesting stuff, not just admin anything. So just kind of reminding every once in a while and really making sure you have those weekly meetings and things like that. I think my team was incredibly receptive and happy for me to be there. And every time I reached out, they were definitely receptive. But sometimes with people who aren't used to doing these kind of programs, it's key to like just do those gentle reminders and say like, hey, I'm done with this assignment. What else would you like me to do? Things like that. But it's a two-way street where you both need to be like pushing and making sure everybody's there and aware of the expectations needed.
Very wise. Thank you very much, Satya. Now we'll move on, and I know you have class coming up, so I'm going to thank you very much for making time to be with us. Our next speaker, and I'll ask him maybe to unmute and show his video, is Junyoung Choi, who is a graduate student at Teachers College, and he joins us. He is also, as you can see, an essential worker. He is a teacher in the New York City public school system, and at work as part of his TC training. But Junyoung worked with our Santiago office, again, a relatively small office, but with a huge interest in Chile and in our Chile office in arranging internships. And Junyoung, you had a particularly interesting one, and I'd like to welcome you to the call and ask you to tell us a little bit about it.
Sure, thank you, Thomas. Hi, everybody. My name is Junyoung Choi. Like Thomas said, I'm currently in my school building, so I apologize if I sound a little bit muffled. I'll try to be as articulate as possible. So yeah, as Thomas said, I work at the Santiago Global Centers over in Chile. My specific role was to conduct research on the economic and financial trends of COVID-19. While the main headquarters of this research was in Chile itself, the research itself was very expansive. So it wasn't secluded just to Latin America or South America. It branched globally. So I did a lot of projections of models in Asia and the Middle East. And then we branched over into Africa and then also into the European Union. So in terms of the actual experience, hands-on experience, it was very content heavy, but at the same time, it was very rewarding. My undergrad experience at Boston University, I majored in international relations and economics. And as you can see, I'm a teacher, so it felt really good to go back into sort of that international mindset and conducting research that way. To answer the third question of why this matters, I mean, COVID-19 has just dominated the international stage and in a lot of mostly negative ways, but I feel that the one silver lining, the one positive of this global situation is the global centers being so adaptive and being so able to sort of finesse in the most appropriate and best way possible to allow Columbia University students, undergrad and graduate and even doctoral students, these opportunities to get a real work experience. I've made a lot of connections. Jorge Saad, who is the director over there in Santiago, he and I are now on just texting basis, and it's really, really nice to have all these connections after a really packed 8 to 12 weeks.
Thank you so much, Junyoung. And you bring to mind that tell us you'd never been in Chile before, had no particular interest in South America before, but thought this would be an interesting opportunity, and it wound up to to be exactly that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's 100% it. I do have a background in speaking Spanish, so this also was an opportunity to practice. So actually, a piece of advice I have for any students that are wanting to apply is, if you see a language requirement, don't take that as sort of a deterrent. Take that as a challenge and tackle it head on. You will come out a little bit stronger at the end of the internship.
Thank you so much, Jun Young, and I'm sure you've got young citizens to take care of today, and I appreciate your sharing this time with us. It reminds me to say that Jun Young is a student at Teachers College, so graduate students are also very welcome to participate in all of our international initiatives, including this one on virtual internships. Jun Young, thank you very, very much for sharing your experiences with us this morning. Now we're kind of switching continents, and we're going to be talking to Red Coltrane Ingram. Red, there you are. I see you on my screen now. Red has been working with our Paris office. He'll tell you about it more in just a minute. Represents a different field of interest. He's a different area of the world in which he's worked, but very important work that he did. Red, could you please welcome to the webinar, and please tell us a little bit about what you did, why it mattered, what advice you have for us.
Sure, thanks for having me. My name is Red Coltrane. I'm a senior at Columbia College. I study music and sociology, and I'm also in the Columbia Juilliard Exchange, where I study double bass performance. Now, this summer, I got to work with the Reed Hall team in Paris, and what we were focusing on were collecting stories from Reed Hall alumni. The purpose of this work really was because, as far as study abroad programs are concerned across the board, there's been a trend in the last 30, 50 years of study abroad programs, or people that are studying abroad taking a shorter stay in these foreign programs. And so in the last 20 years, especially, what we've been seeing is that what used to be a year-long study abroad program is now turned into a semester or even 10 weeks or less. And this is all pre-COVID, right? And so with COVID, what we're also seeing is a lot of study abroad programs have been forced or pressured really to try to find out how they can offer an abroad experience for students that are still at home or at their home universities, or, so it's just a lot harder to be in this study abroad space. And so what we were hoping to do with collecting these stories was underscore the value of studying abroad, and not just study, but actually being abroad, and what it means to get out of your home university, get out of your home country, and out of your comfort zone to really be a part of this cultural exchange. And so what I got to do is I got to speak to a lot of alumni of the program, and I did interviews. I had some people write blog posts. I had some people write creative stories really about their time abroad and how it affected their college career, their life after college, and just their life in general. And so I really, really enjoyed this work and enjoyed being a virtual intern, just because, one, I was very grateful to be working with the Reed Hall team again. I just love everyone there. They're like some of my favorite people that I've met in the Columbia community. But then on top of that, they gave me a lot of creative freedom for how we were going to accomplish this, because it's easy for us to say, yes, study abroad is so valuable, but it's so much, I think, more beneficial to hear from actual alumni about why this program was useful and what they got out of it. And so I actually, if it's okay, I wanted to read a little passage that I got from a student that studied abroad in Paris. And, she speaks about how, being in a country where you don't speak the language, the native language, as your first language can be very daunting your first time there. And so I'll just read what she said. She was an art student. She said,
Please do.
Sorry?
I said, please do.
Oh, okay. She says, I was in Paris to learn and adapt both inside and outside of the classroom. My scores became less important and I focused on creating. It turns out the professor's harsh comments had significant value and I improved a lot as an artist. Failure became funny and important mementos rather than embarrassing moments I wanted to forget. Study abroad pushed me to focus on myself rather than others' perceptions of me, which allowed me more room for my growth as an artist, student, and individual. And so those themes are things that I heard from so many students that I talked to. And I don't know, I studied abroad and I'm kind of biased. So I'm always like, yes, everyone should study abroad. And Paris was wonderful. And I grew as an individual, but to hear other stories just reminded myself, but then also just motivated me more to be a part of this work and to encourage more students to be studying abroad and to contribute to these programs. So as far as the internship is concerned and what I would give advice for other students, I think this was a very easy internship for me to do abroad, right? Because I wasn't, even if I were in Paris doing this work, I'd still be reaching out via phone or FaceTime or Zoom to talk to these alumni wherever they are in the world. But my advice would just be, I don't want to go into journalism. I'm actually starting a career in filmmaking, and I think it's important to know how to interview people and know how to talk to people if you're going to go into filmmaking. And so, no, this was not directly related, but it was just helpful. Any interview that I do with anyone can be helpful, and then and soliciting work from creative people is also huge. So I think I'm really glad I did it. I would say just go for it. It was so nice to be able to say that I was working in Paris while living in New York. So yeah, that was my internship experience.
That was a wonderful experience, and it's wonderful not only for your fellow students who are listening intently, Red, as you speak, but to all of us. What you found out is inspiring, and we share your very high regard for Reed Hall, the Columbia Global Center in Paris, and the great people there who kind of work behind the scenes to make sure all these internships get off to a good start and create the best opportunities for you.
Tom, before you turn to the next student, I just want to say how incredibly touched and proud I feel of all of you for your perspectives, for what you're sharing with us, and for your global mindedness. Red, everything that you've just said is really about what college and college experience is all about. It's about preparing you for life. It's about cultivating your intellectual curiosity, cultivating your interests in the world around you. And so I'm delighted, to sort of on every word that you shared with us, I was hanging. And my respect and admiration is really across the board to all of you, and to you, Tom, for really managing this program so wonderfully.
I'm very, very happy to take the credit for the credit. I think, as you know, Safwan, and as you just said, it comes from these wonderful students we're privileged enough to be with. Well, if we could, and the time is beginning to be a little bit of an issue, thank you again, Red, Junyong, and Satya, who's had to leave us, I think. Thank you very much. We still have two more students, wonderful students to hear from. They're going to be presenting together, and I want to just give a teeny bit of context here. Claire Rigney and Natalie Cimino, they answered the question for us, Safwan, of what did we really do? What happened to these? This is taking place in many countries around the world, more than 150 internships. Claire and Natalie approached me and said, could I give them an overview? And I said, no, I can't. Maybe you can help us figure out what happened. And what they've done is even more than just take a general stock of what the virtual internship program was about. They created a website, which I believe, Claire and Natalie, I'm not speaking out of turn here, you're about to launch and tell us about, but you're also going to add your thoughts about the overall virtual internship experience. Not just your own, but that what you've been able to learn from talking to so many students and global centers around the world. So I'll turn it over to you, Claire, and then you'll call on Natalie to talk to us, to launch the global website and to give us your overall views. Thank you.
Definitely. So nice to see you all. So my name is Claire. This is Natalie. We were interns with the New York Center, or the New York portion of the global centers. And so what we did this summer was we interviewed many of the interns that both spoke here today and many other interns from all of the 9 global centers, speaking about what they did this summer, what internships they took part in, and what they did in those internships, what they learned, and they told us a little bit about how their summers went. So I'll give Natalie for her experiences as an interviewer.
Thank you, Tom and Claire. So Yeah, Claire and I and our fellow intern, Luke, who couldn't make it because he has class right now, we spent the summer interviewing and researching these interns and speaking with them about their experience, and in of itself, learning about our own experience with the global centers and virtual internships. And it was a really great experience because a lot of the thoughts about people's experience with the virtual internships were echoed. A lot of people, I mean, the main draw was, of course, the flexibility, but of course that comes with a bit of discipline. And so, similar to what the three previous panelists spoke about, some of the tips that we received from the virtual interns for other virtual internships were to create a set schedule for yourself and to let people around you know about it, to set attainable goals for yourself and stick to them, because while you have that flexibility and you're working from home, it is harder to motivate yourself to work. To, of course, communicate frequently with your supervisors because it's virtual and because it's harder to get that human interaction, and to ask questions, because after all, you still are a student and no one expects you to know everything. So don't be afraid to reach out, and most importantly, to schedule in self-care for yourself. Step away from your screen for a while and make sure that you give yourself some time away from your work every day, as well as familiarize yourself with the technology that you're going to be using. And again, don't be afraid to ask questions. And I think Claire now will navigate us through the website that we created, which is made up mostly of the profiles of 20-some interns that we interviewed and their tips for virtual interns. So I'll give it over to Claire to take us through.
Okay, so I just want to make sure, can everyone see that? Is it sharing the website right now?
Yes, it is.
Okay, every time that I do this, sometimes it doesn't work. So this is the homepage of the virtual internship stories. This lovely piece of artwork Natalie did, where she superimposed images of the interns that we interviewed this summer over a landscape of the Columbia background. So on this website, we have some quotes from some of the interviews that we did. We have a few profiles right here on the home page. And then at the bottom here, we have a video of each of the interviews that we did. We asked for tips and tricks from the virtual interns because we knew that the interns that we were interviewing had the experience of doing this virtual internship earlier than most others have. And so it's probably going to be, like we were saying before in this Zoom call, that it's going to be such a common experience for people to have virtual internships or to be working from home over Zoom. So we wanted to leverage the experience and all of the knowledge that Columbia students have gained this summer so that new virtual interns can use that experience and try and not make the same mistakes or just learn a little bit more before they get ready to do it. So then if you're on this homepage, you can click here and you'll get transported out to our to the list of all of the interviews we did. Sorry, my computer is being a little bit slow.
So you're in a hurry. It knows you're in a hurry.
So we have both videos of our interviews as well as transcripts of all the interviews. So if you'd like to read or if you'd like to watch, we have options for either. If you'd like to look at specific centers, like I did most of the interviews for the Santiago Center, you can go and look at just the ones from the Santiago Center. Say you wanted to look at June's profile, you would go click on this page and it would bring you to his, where you would have his video of our interview together and then a transcript of all of his answers. And then down at the bottom with the tag, you could click the tag and this would bring you out to a page with all of the interviews that we did. And I know that sometimes, I know that when I'm looking at websites, I get a little bit confused trying to get to individual things on the website. So if you just go to the homepage of the Columbia Global Centers, I'll show you how to get there. You just go down the homepage of the Global Centers, click on the virtual internship spot, and then the virtual internship stories, and it'll bring you right to the homepage. So that is just a little bit of a tutorial on how to use the website. Trevor did so much of the work with that. We did a lot of the content stuff and came up with a mock-up of the website, but our boss Trevor did a lot of the actual input on the website, and he did such a great job making it user-friendly. And we wanted to really create a website that people would want to look at and want to learn from. So I hope that we did that. So if you have any questions.
You did that, and you more than did that, and you're right to point out the work of Trevor Arnett and Marika Olson, our great communications people in New York. They're actually behind the scenes of this webinar today. But thank you, Claire, and thank you, Natalie. I'm learning things myself about what happened during the summer, and we've got more to learn. Just a quick practical question, because in introducer, we want to now roll out the new round of virtual internships. Just to back you up just a quick second, on that website you've just shown us, there will be a link as soon as it's live, which I think is imminent. There'll be links to the new set of internships. Is that correct for the students still on the line?
Yes, I believe so, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so there'll be other ways. We'll have a blanket approach to getting the word out about the new internships, but that website is going to be a key source for it. Thank you, Claire, and thank you, Natalie. And Safwan, if it's all right with you, I'll roll out. I'll discuss the procedures for the new round of internships, and then you have some concluding remarks, unless you'd like to speak.
Yeah.
Now.
No. Please go ahead. I just want to, echo what I said earlier. I mean, listening to Claire and Natalie, it's just, you guys are great. You're the reason that we love doing what we're doing, really.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tom.
I should say, thank you so much, Claire and Natalie. You give us energy to continue on. Well, as Safwan Masri, our Executive Vice President for Global Centers and Global Development, mentioned at the very beginning, we are today announcing a launch of a second round of virtual internships for the fall term of 2020. This very problematic fall term of 2020. At last count, and opportunities are still arriving. We have about more than 140 positions around the world in all of the global centers. Most are voluntary. Your reward will be in the experience you'll gain, but there are some that are paid as well. And as I say, the 140, it's worth coming back to the website and checking it from time to time. We didn't have that much time this go around to canvass all of our employers, and some of them are still going to get back to us. But let's just put it that way. We have at least 140, and that number is rising. The new internships will be available, as we just described, on the new website, and we'll find other ways through your schools to make sure the word goes out to Columbia students. And yes, these are limited to Columbia University students, broadly understood. Some recent graduates can still apply, and there may be some exceptions made, but basically it's intended for, the spirit of this is our Columbia students. You just have to fill out a very simple application form. The website will give you the link to it. You can, yes, apply to more than one position. If, for example, you're deferring and you have more time and you want to apply for another internship, yes, you can do that, but it's not just check the box. You're going to have to submit a separate application, separate rationale for each of the positions that you're applying for. The period of application starts today, on September 15th, and goes through next week. We have a tentative deadline date of September 23rd. What actually happens is you apply basically to us, to the respective global center, as for example, Santiago, for example, Amman, that found the internship. And there's a brief period of time where some filtering occurs at the global centers. We collect the resumes that come in, and then we send them on to the employer. But from that point on, we sort of step out of the picture, and the employers, it's up to them, the patrons, the organizers, the sponsors, they will be in touch with you for next steps and ultimately for the selection process. We're there to facilitate things, but we also don't want to get in the way. Although the first approach, your first contact when you apply will be with us. Internships tentatively run from the earliest possible in October to December 10th, sort of at the beginning of Columbia's exam period. But the exact times and dates obviously depend. We're dealing with the whole world here. Depend on the organization's particular demands and the student's individual availability. A lot of beautiful things can happen maybe between those start dates and end dates that we've mentioned. Center staff, global center staff are always available in case of any need by the students. And at the end of your experience, just as we did today, we'd be interested in hearing about your experience. You may actually report back to us toward the end of your experience about how the internship went and what suggestions you have. Certificates of participation signed by Safwan himself will be available upon successful conclusion of your internship at the end of the semester. So Safwan, I'm sure maybe there are some questions that are going to come in, and you would like to maybe leave some time for that. If there are, it's been a little bit of a quick launch here, but I hope that was clear. And I would like maybe at this point, Safwan, I'll turn it back to you for your further reflections, instruction, and other advice for the students who are listening in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. Thank you. I mean, I think you've done it all. I'll be very quick, conscious of people's time and the fact that we have neared, well, actually we've reached the end of our time. I want to thank the students who participated a great deal. You know, June and Natalie and Claire and Dred, and I'm missing one, Tom.
Satya.
I'm Safiya. Yes, absolutely, of course. So thank you all for participating. I think this is a great program. Thank you for helping make it successful. Very, very excited about the next phase of it. I do want to say to all the students, this is, I mean, we keep talking about the fact that this is unprecedented in our lifetimes, at least, you know, even Tom's lifetime, the crisis that we are going through. But in every crisis, there are opportunities and there are silver linings. And I think that the learning that you are experiencing, the opportunity for you to be thinking about the world in a very, very different manner, to think about your education in the world also in a different manner, is really important. I mean, nothing is business as usual. And I think that that brings with it a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities. And I know that you will look back for the remainder of your life at this phase of it and will feel incredibly fortunate for having had, one, the opportunity and the good fortune to be able to make something positive out of it and to find opportunity in the crisis, and two, that you will look back at it and look at your own resourcefulness and your ability to really seek opportunities and seek solutions and look at this really and get out of it something that is very positive. We're here to support you. You're the champions here, and you know our job is really to try to facilitate as much as possible for you. And you know, we will come back to you with lots of innovative programs. So the virtual internships is one, the access to space where you can be with other Columbia students and where you can have a comfortable, learning conducive environment to learn from while you are, you know, wherever you are around the world is another one, and you'll hear more about it. And you know, I just look forward to this being a dynamite year for you. And thank you very much.